Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world away from the numbers.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show, broadcasting on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. I'm Michael McCall,
And I'm Zachary Meisenheimer.
and we're here to talk about back-to-back, baby. Yes, in that rarity, the Whitecaps have won 2 in a row. That, from a Whitecaps point of view, is basically like reaching the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, MDS is going to be very, very pleased, and I think the squad is going to be pleased at the progression in terms of the results, for sure. Yeah, and they still could make the playoffs.
Well, right now, they are sitting 7th in the playoffs. Not even in the last spot holding on. They are sitting 7th. Immediately after the game, they were apparently up at 5th. But then other results came in, which I don't know if you've seen the Portland result tonight, Zach. 6-1 win away from home at San Jose. What's happening at RSL? What's happening at San Jose? What's happening at LAFC? I've got a theory about all of that. We'll talk about that later in the show. It's kind of something I spoke to MLS about. I put a lot of it down to fatigue, but we'll come to that later. Because this is obviously just one of the strangest seasons we're probably ever going to have in our lifetime, or hopefully we're ever going to have, because let's hope there's not going to be another year like 2020. But I mean, nothing says weirdness in 2020 than the Whitecaps winning back-to-back games and winning in RSL, which I believe the last time and the only time they won down there, Zach, you were actually there.
Yeah, I think it was the 2015. It was the road trip we did where we took in the we took in the second and third WFC2 away games of the year, and then drove home from their RSL game in time to get home for the WFC2 home opener at
I
Thunderbird.
remember you doing that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. I think it was like Russell Tybert set up Darren Maddox for the goal. If memory serves me correctly.
Whatever happened to him?
No, seriously, yeah. What happened to him?
I don't know. I'm serious as well. I don't know. He had that slight car mishap, and then he's kind of disappeared off the face of the earth.
I haven't heard anything since then.
No.
Mind you, that was pre-COVID, right? So
yeah, everything pre-COVID doesn't count. So I think he's totally safe. It's all good. Oh, should also, if anyone's wondering where Steve is this week, he's on a boat at the moment that hasn't docked. We're hoping it might be able to dock before the end of the recording. But, I mean, you know what it's like, the fog and the smoke. It's very easy to get lost out there at sea. So if we don't get him on this week's show, I'm sure we will get Seaman Steve on next week's show.
He lives in Port City. Surely he can find somewhere to park his yacht.
I don't know. Yeah, you get carried away sometimes on a boat. We have got a lot to talk about. There's 2 matches. We're not going to dwell too much on the Montreal game from Wednesday, but I do want to obviously talk about it because there was a couple of really big talking points coming out of it from both sides. From a Whitecaps perspective, obviously, Lucas Cavallini had been suspended for his moment of stupidity on Sunday at BC Place. That got us wondering, would we see Fredy Montero? Well, not only did we see Fredy Montero, we saw a rejuvenated Fredy Montero, although with what he was saying after the game in RSL tonight, this has always been the same Fredy Montero. Nothing's changed with him. It's just he's actually getting to play some games now.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I said in last show, I don't think he is anywhere near his best. Obviously, these two games he's trying to prove people like me wrong.
Well, he's doing a very good job.
Yeah, but I mean, he wasn't in great form last year, like at all. Like the whole year, it felt like. I don't know. It feels like in retrospect.
Well, yeah. I mean, if we look at his stats for last year, because I got that up just before we started recording this. So last year, 32 appearances, 22 of them were starts. He scored 8 goals, which is the lowest in any of his seasons in MLS. The previous worst before that was 10 in his second year with the Sounders. And he only got 3 assists. Now, to put that in perspective, in his 4 years with the Sounders, he got 7, 10, 9 and 8 assists. Then his first year with the Whitecaps in 2017, he got 6. So he only got 3 in all of last year. This year, in the last 2 games, he's got 3 assists.
Yeah. How many of those 8 goals are penalties, though, too?
That's true. They all count, I believe you told me when I kept going on about that with Pedro Morales.
No, I'm just saying they do all count. But I mean, when you talk about someone being in form, I think something you need to take into account.
So I mean, Fredy is performing great, and so let's just talk a little bit about that performance on Wednesday. Just a little bit. We won't delve too much into it. I don't know how much you can really take from it, Zach, because it was against 10 men for more than one half of the match. All the Whitecaps goals came once Montreal had gone down to 10 men. And let's talk about that sending off from Rui Camacho, because we tore into Lucas Cavallini for some stupidity on the Sunday. I have no idea what was going through Camacho's head. Even if he thought Fredy was the guy that hit him, even if Fredy had said something to him as he was trying to get him up off the ground, to punch him in this day and age with cameras everywhere, with VAR everywhere, and it was a punch. I mean, folk are saying Fredy went down easy. I tell you, if I got punched in the knee, I'm pretty sure I would go down as well in a heap.
Yeah, I mean, Camacho's got to know that he's punching a South American player and he's making contact with a South American player, and they're going to go down easy. It's a no-brainer that that's what's going to happen. But yeah, you're right. Just the whole act in and of itself is pure lunacy. Like, I mean, I don't know if it was you, I don't know if it was in our WhatsApp chat or whatever, but it's like, if you really wanted to express your anger, why not stand up, walk outside the penalty box, and then really hit the guy? Mm-hmm. Was that you who said that?
No, but that's a very good point.
You know what I mean? Like, at least you wouldn't cost your team a penalty.
We talk about South American players going down easy and whether Fredy did or not. Let's be honest here. If Fredy hadn't, I'm not sure the referee would have seen it or even looked at it again, or if it would have been picked up by the fourth officials or what. I think it's because Fredy did make something of it that they start to look at this situation.
Well, technically the VAR people are supposed to be looking at everything. But you're right. Embellishment, can help you sometimes.
And then it gave away the penalty, so Fredy stepped up, he buried it, and it was 1-0. A couple of minutes later, a fantastic strike from Dahomey, set up by Fredy. Ball through the legs of Fanny. Love that. Made me laugh. And then a great ball from Milinkovic, and the finish from Dahomey, great finish. And Milinkovic ran about 60 yards to go and celebrate with MDS. And I asked Milinkovic on Friday before this game just about the relationship that he's got with MDS. And with everything that he went through at Hull and how much he hated it there and how much he clearly hated the management team there, I think he is just relishing the faith and the trust that MDS has given him to go and be the player that we know he can be, I know that he can be from what he was at Hearts and from his time before Hearts. And that's what you want. You want to see a player that's playing for your coach, and Milinkovic is definitely a player that's doing that and got the goal again tonight, which we'll talk about in a sec.
Yeah, he's come in with some questionable things from his time, especially I think at Hull. But he's proven in Vancouver to be, I think, a diligent, hardworking, attacking midfielder. And consistency, is maybe a bit of a question. But yeah, I think right now he's in some pretty good form. But, just looking at setting up that goal in the last game and then scoring the opener in this evening's game.
Then the thing with that Montreal game is even though the Whitecaps had a 2-goal lead and a 1-man advantage, I felt nervous because this genuinely feels like a team that cannot play A with a lead and B with a man advantage. Have both of them, and I think you've got a bit of trouble. And unfortunately, we saw that again tonight, and that is something that's definitely going to have to get ironed out. But when Montreal pulled that goal back, I was like, oh no, I was kind of sensing the worst. But I mean, full credit to them. They just knuckled down, they went back to the pit, they got the third goal. Just like tonight, they got the second goal. So, I mean, there's a bit of fight, there's a bit of spark about them. And it was Fredy again. And it just capped off a remarkable comeback performance from Fredy. And, I mean, you're coming out of that game talking about Fredy. He's the big talking point. And then starting to think, okay then, does Cava get back in the team? Where does he fit into the team? Do we move Fredy behind Cava? Is that as impactful? Or do we play the two of them together? So there's a lot of questions coming out of that. And we got some answers tonight in that Cava was on the bench. And I think that was the right decision, Zach, because Fredy had to start tonight against RSL. But do you think it was right to not bring Cava in from the start?
Well, two things. One, you think the Colombian, I think, earned the start based on his performance in the previous game. And when it comes to Cava, despite his the remorse he expressed during the week, I think it was also fair not to start him. Not to like send a message, but to just say, hey, you cost us. You served your suspension, and then in your next game, you're going to be a substitute before you get back into the starting lineup. Whether or not that's the exact thought process or communication approach that MDS and his staff take, I'm not sure, but to me, I thought it was fair. I thought it was fair. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic stuff by Fredy. You can't leave him out after that. And the interesting thing for me was Cava did not get an additional game ban, whereas Maciel did get an additional game ban. Cava got fined twice, once for not leaving the pitch and then once for, I think, hands to face or whatever. I'm very, very amazed that we didn't get that. Finally, the Whitecaps are getting the benefit of having a big name DP.
Yeah, that must be what it is, because when you look at those two, I know the Maciel one, you could say, yeah, it endangers player safety, but Cavallini's behavior and the hands to the throat or the hands to the face or whatever, to me, I'm shocked he didn't get at least a 2-match ban. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's MLS just saying, hey, he's a DP and we'll just fine him, and it's better for our coffers and better for Vancouver in terms of them being able to use him again quicker.
Yeah. Plus, when you're a DP, obviously you're rolling in the Garber box, so you can afford fines. Last thing I want to mention about the Montreal game, though, was from the Montreal point of view, I did not understand Thierry Henry's substitution policy, team selection policy for these two games. The lack of changes that he made was baffling. And I think ultimately it cost him not just points, but a place in the Canadian Championship final. I know he has faith in the starting 11 that he's going with, and it is clearly his strongest starting 11. But that was some really weird game management by him.
Yeah, it seemed really foolish, especially from someone as experienced in the game as TT. I know you want to build the chemistry. You want to have a starting 11 that is a cohesive unit and stuff. But in the midst of all that's going on, and you would have thought you got to change something up in that starting 11. Even if it's just to see, what you have in the deeper parts of your squad that maybe you didn't get to use in Orlando, or you haven't been able to use since Orlando or whatever. So yeah, it did feel a little bit weird, and the Whitecaps, to their credit, again, took advantage of that.
Yeah, just strange, and I know Montreal fans were not happy for a number of reasons after that one, and especially when you're handing your rival Toronto a place in the final, whenever that final may be. That's something we're going to come to in part 5. And talking of lineup changes, What is that I hear? Is that a boat docking? I think it is, and we're joined now by salty seaman himself, Steve Pander. Hey, Steve.
Ahoy hoy, everybody.
Oh, I love your little captain's hat that you've got on there. It just adds to this special touch. This is how we're going to be able to travel to all these games in the States for the rest of the year for MLS to follow the Caps. We're going to have Steve just get his boat down there. Might be a bit problematic for Kansas, but we'll see how we get on.
If you look at my initials, they are the SS Pander. So it does work out that way.
But there was another lineup change on Saturday night, not just ourselves here on the show. Also, Marc Dos Santos made one change and one change only to the team that won on Wednesday night. Out went Theo Bair. In came Ali Adnan, but not in his left-wing position. What we've been talking about, what we wanted to see, we mentioned it on last week's show. He played the left midfield role, and Gutierrez, who was outstanding against Montreal midweek, kept his spot. Happy days. Or at least it looked happy days. But that first half, not a lot to write home about. I think that was, and I asked MDS about this after the game, and we'll talk a little bit about fatigue and stuff in part 3, but that looked like two tired teams out there that had been playing a lot of games in not a lot of days, and that was a first half that there was just nothing, apart from one save from Thomas Hasal, nothing to talk about.
It felt like the teams were like trying to. It seemed like the teams haven't seen each other for a long time, and they were trying to feel each other out, and that's where I think that you know, I don't know if it seemed like they were afraid that each team had COVID or something. That's what it felt like. They wanted to stay away from each other and they wanted to keep their separation. So, you're going to kind of expect that, I think, a little bit, because teams haven't. It's kind of a weird season so far because you haven't seen each other. Even when you're in Orlando, you haven't maybe been in the same groups, so you kind of don't have the same familiarity. So I think that kind of has a big difference there.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there was the one nice save from Hasal in the first half, but you're right. The quality of play, left a lot to be desired.
At that point, RSL to me, it felt like they maybe had the quality to lift themselves, and they did come out strong at the start of the second half. But then, it's like, it almost felt like from nowhere. But again, we talked about the fighting spirit of the Whitecaps on Wednesday night. They came back from being a little bit under the cosh in the opening minutes of the second half to take the lead in the 53rd minute. And the Colombian connection, I'm trying to get that going as a hashtag. Christian Dahomey to Fredy Montero. Fredy Montero cuts the ball back for David Milinkovic, who scores his first goal as a Whitecap, capping off what has been a couple of outstanding performances for the Frenchman. We actually were talking a little bit about that, Steve, just before you jumped on. So, just get your thoughts of what you've thought of Milinkovic over the last couple of games and the goal tonight.
I think it seems like he's found some kind of inspiration. I don't know if it's the new kid. Like, they had the video of the new kid, him with his new son.
Yeah.
And it was a very cute video, but it seems like he's been inspired by him or something like that. And maybe that's something that happens for players when they have somebody like a newborn that comes into their life. It didn't happen for me in particular. No offense to my kids, but it seems to have like generated some kind of like level of inspiration for him, and he's turned up at another level. It's amazing for him.
But at that point, 1-0 Whitecaps, you still thought, I fancied RSL, we're going to get back into it. But then we're always talking about these game-turning moments. And the 63rd minute, Kyle Beckerman, well, first of all, Thomas Hasal spills a ball, which is concerning that he spilled a couple of these now over the games, but they've not proved costly, so there's a plus. He was quick to recover it, but then as he went down to smother it, Beckerman goes for the ball, but follows through Lucas Cavallini style. I'm pretty sure this was giving Cava some flashbacks to last Sunday as well. It got sent to VAR. Beckerman picked up a second yellow, which meant a red, and then the veteran was off.
Yeah, and I think Zach, you were mentioning, can they review for even yellow cards? But the thing is they can, like the person in the VAR could have mentioned that it was a straight red, and they can review it for that. But then if they don't feel it's a red, they can still give the player a yellow, and that's obviously what happened there. I think it personally was a straight red, the way he went in there. But even if it's a yellow, obviously it was the second one. So like Cavallini in your case, like the way you mentioned, Michael, it was the second yellow and the red card, and he's off. And obviously at that point, I was thinking that the Whitecaps are in danger because they're a man up. But and obviously the kind of came true for a little bit there.
Yeah, no, I don't question the logic of it. I thought there were some pretty specific things that we could or could not, the VAR could or could not do to impact the game. And I thought yellow cards was one of those. But yeah, to me, like, it makes sense. Like, and yeah, he made contact with the keeper's head. So I guess, yeah, Steve, arguably, you could say he could be sent off for that in of itself.
I think I saw it in a World Cup game. I can't remember the specific game, but it might have been even was it Portugal versus Iran, where it was Ronaldo making a specific play, and they reviewed it and they gave him a yellow instead of a red, even though they reviewed it for the red card. And so I think that's where I saw it in the World Cup.
I think I remember that, actually.
It was a lot for me like the Cava one, in that when I first saw it, I thought, I don't think it was that bad. But then you see it from a different angle, and it's like, he definitely didn't need to do that. And it's a shame. I mean, Beckerman's done a couple of stupid things and had a couple of settings off. He booted the ball at the referee that got him a red card earlier this year as well. So on my East Fife podcast, we actually did an interview with Kenny Dooker, who is an East Fife legend, played over in Scotland, but also had a stint. He spent a season here with RSL. And we do on the show, we get them to pick their all-time best team that they've played with. And he had his goalkeeper Nick Romando from his time at RSL, but he also put in Kyle Beckerman. And he spoke about the talent that this guy had, and that he could easily have gone and done big things in Europe and stuff like that. It feels maybe now, though, that Beckerman maybe wants to call it a day, because he's looking at a shadow of the Beckerman that we saw in this league even 2 seasons ago. But Whitecaps, up a goal, up a man. What could go wrong? Well, find out exactly what did go wrong after this.
Hi, I'm Marc Dos Santos, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Am I supposed to walk you home when you're at least 50 feet ahead? 'Cause you walked off in a huff, and I'm that pissed. I can't remember what it was I said. You wouldn't touch him now. Well, let's face it, he always used to go for that kind. And if you ever really wanted 2-minute ones, all I'm saying is I better be one of the guys you've got in mind.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's this month's Artist of the Month here at AFTN from Falkirk, Scotland, Arab Strap, with a song from their second album, Philophobia. That was Here We Go from 1998. And I thought, we're all in a nice upbeat mood at the moment. Why don't I take the mood down with a little bit of Arab Strap? Because if anything's going to take the mood down, it's Arab Strap. I love my depressing music. That's pretty much what you could say that was. But I tell you what was not depressing. The Whitecaps result tonight down in Sandy, Utah. And we're going to delve into this part, looking at the rest of the game, some of the talking points coming out of it. We'll hear a little bit of audio from both head coaches. So we set it up before the break there. The Whitecaps were up a man. They were up a goal. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it lit a fire under RSL, getting that sending off from Betterman. And they were looking at a different team after that. They took the game to the Whitecaps. The Caps felt like they just didn't know how to play. They were playing so deep. They were really struggling to get just out of the final third in their half. And when they did get some quick counters sprung, they looked dangerous. But it was trying to get those sprung that was just not happening. And I sensed, and I actually tweeted, that they're struggling here and it feels like they're going to give up a goal. And about a minute to 2 minutes later, that's exactly what happened when RSL tied it up. Beautiful ball to the back post by Michael Chung. Waiting there, Justin Miram heads home. I mean, finished well, rose well, headed past Hassal. I feel Jake Nerwinski could have done better. And you're thinking, oh boy, they've gone and given a goal up against 10 men, against a team that had just been hammered the week before. Obviously, Mark said after the game, it was a team that basically felt at that point they probably had nothing to play for, so they may as well go for it in front of their home fans. But you're thinking, this is just unravelling pretty quickly from a Whitecaps point of view.
Yeah, I think that Jake, I feel like it's almost like, I don't know what you want to call it, like deja vu, where he felt like he had to play in deep to the center back. Yeah, maybe he felt like Andy Rose was playing in that position because he seemed like he was playing a little bit too close to the center back. And he just, I don't know if he just misjudged the ball coming in or there was something else, but he seemed to move in a little bit too further into the center, and then he kind of realized the ball was coming to the far post, and then he kind of backed up, and I think it was just a misjudgment. So I don't, definitely it would be, you could classify it as his fault because he should have been where he was, but overall I don't think it's like, I think it was just a misjudging, so no big deal considering they won the game. Sorry, spoilers.
There's a lot of things that went wrong on the goal. You're right that Jake really needed to do better. I think Thomas Hassal did very poorly on the goal as well. But the whole thing starts with a breakdown between Gutierrez and Ali Adnan. As Gutierrez plays a pass up to Ali Adnan up the wing, Ali either doesn't know it's coming or he doesn't go to the ball. He's waiting for it to come to him, and it gets intercepted, and then the play comes back the other way. And Gutierrez doesn't do great either to cut out the cross or create a bit bigger obstacle for that. And I mean, if you're Salt Lake, you're very happy. If you're Vancouver, I'm sure that all the coaches are gonna have lots to talk about and break that down in their preparation for their next game, because a lot of people did a lot of things wrong.
And that's the thing, you're 100% right there, because everybody's going to see that, people are going to watch the highlights and they're going to see that it's Jake's man that got the goal. But you don't always see the stuff that happens beforehand that leads up to the goal. So 100%, I agree with you there, Zach, that you have to look at the whole play and what happens prior to the play, even 10, 15 seconds before the play, that can cause that goal.
Fredy also didn't track Krylach very well. He kind of just sauntered back, whereas Krylach was ahead of him to set the play up to begin with.
I prefer not to have Fredy back in the box because that can lead to a penalty too. Yes. So we don't want to take that risk.
He's wasted back there anyway. But you talked about Ali there, and there was another example in the half, actually it was in the first half, where Bikel ended up getting the booking. And that all stemmed from Ali just not putting a tackle in. And just he looked out of sorts in the first half. And MDS actually said post-game that Ali was really struggling with the altitude in that first half. He kind of got a bit more adjusted as the game went on. And I guess it is something a lot of players... I mean, I spoke about interviewing Kenny Duker for my East Fife podcast. We also interviewed another Scottish guy that played for East Fife, Tam McManus, who played in Colorado. And they both said how difficult it was when they first got to playing in altitude, and they thought they were dying when they were running. So when you've just arrived yesterday and you've not had a training session on the pitch, and it's something you're not used to playing at, I'm actually surprised the players did as well as they did out there.
Yeah, but I remember, I think it was Martin Rennie back in the day, and I was talking about Alta. I think it was probably Colorado. I was asking about, and he goes that sometimes you want to go there just the day before because then you don't get in the player's mind. Because sometimes it's more of a mind game than anything that the altitude is going to play such an effect on you. So I think that's probably what's the case. So I think it was Martin Rennie because it was almost a number of years ago when I asked him about that.
Yeah, with the altitude, what you want to do is one of two things. You want to go in as early and help your body get acclimatized to it, or you go in as close as you can to kickoff. So your body just kind of goes out and does its thing. And yeah, I think I've heard both Martin Rennie and Carl Robertson say that in the past.
So at this point, it's 1-1. And you're thinking it's going to be disappointing just to get a point, but it's going to be even more disappointing if they come out of this with nothing, because I thought RSL's fired up here. But again, as we talked about with that Montreal game, where Montreal pulled a goal back and you were worried, at least the Whitecaps were leading in that one. In this one, they're level. But both games, the Whitecaps showed the fight and the passion to go back up the field, to get the job done, to get the goal that was going to seal the points on Wednesday and win the game here. And it was another excellent goal with some excellent build-up work. And it starts off with Michael Baldissimo. An absolutely sublime cross-field ball from Baldy. From his own half, finding Fredy Montero. Fredy cuts it across the 6-yard box for Cava to slide in between two RSL defenders in the back of the net. 2-1. You saw it meant to Cava. After everything that happened, I asked him after the game if he felt that was a bit of redemption, and he said, yeah, I got my vengeance. And I'm delighted for him, actually, because, yep, everyone piled on him on Sunday for that bit of stupidity. He showed today why he's here, and we'll talk in a little bit about just Cavallini and Montero and what they can bring together as a package to the team. But it was a great goal. First of all, though, let's talk about that ball from Baldy. I think he should be starting.
I 100% agree. I don't think anything I've seen from him. He's essentially the Orange Cassidy of the Whitecaps right now. He should be there on the top of the care. And he get it over to a Chuck Taylor. Chuck Taylor puts it in for Trent Barretta. Trent Barretta puts it right into the net. Best friends forever. That's what you're looking at right there. Zach is shaking his head because he has no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if you're wanting a street fight,
that's
go with these guys.
These three guys are the ones you want to go with.
Definitely.
But seriously, Baldissimo has shown time and time again that he makes the great passes. It's like switches, balls up the field. You want to see build up through the pitch, but if you can get somebody that can get the ball up the field faster, why not go for it? You could dink and dunk and, ticky-tacky, whatever you want up the field. But if you can hit a ball to somebody perfectly like that, to Fredy Montero, why not do that? And he put it right into the path of Cavallini. Cavallini had work to do, but he was able to do. That's what you want. You want your bulldog to be there in the middle to, knock the ball into the net. And, yeah, maybe if Nick Raimondo was still in the net, maybe he would have stopped it. But, no, he's not there anymore, so.
I fully agree with you guys. I know they wanted to get Bickle into this game, but I was surprised that Baldy wasn't next to him and that they went with Rusty instead. And again, not to speak negatively of Rusty, because I think Rusty has his place in the team, but I think Baldissimo has shown that he is, I think, in not only has the abilities, but probably is in the best form of everyone in that central midfield. And on top of that, it's not just he's in good form. He's someone who actually contributes to the attack, in every game he does, especially with his long range passing. That diagonal ball he played to the Colombian was one of the best passes from a Whitecap all year.
Yes.
And there's no hesitation. There's no hesitation at all in his pass. The way he makes it, he figures out what he wants to do. He hits it and he makes the right pass. Yeah, in the future, in future games in this year or maybe next year, he'll make a bad pass. But he can. We've seen that he can make that pass. You got to let a player play and be able to make those passes in order for him to, you were talking about one of the best passes. I compared that to a Pedro Morales pass.
Yeah,
that he made when he first started up.
The very first game when he came on at BC Place, that sticks in my mind. It was a cross-field ball. You've also, though, got to give credit to Fredy for getting on that, bringing it down and making something happen with it as well. But for a young lad like that, to have that vision and to know that's exactly where Freddie's going to be. I mean, they might have worked a lot on this in training. I did get, there was a tweet came in from friend of the show, Rick Halland at Halas777, who says, I swear we're allergic to short passes. I'm so tired of the long, hopeful kick. And I get why people would think that. But if they all come off like that, hey, let's just have long, hopeful kicks.
No, but that's the thing. That wasn't a hopeful kick.
I know. That was tailored for Frey to run into.
But even the hopeful, the hopeful kick, you need to do those sometimes because you need to keep the backline honest. Otherwise, the backline is going to be pushed up the field, and they're going to be waiting for those short passes to get up the field. So you got to keep them honest. You got to throw that long ball once in a while to keep them, make sure that they know that they're going to have to backtrack really quickly, so that you keep them on their toes. It's kind of like I know Zach's not going to like this comparison, but it's kind of like American football, where you have to throw that long bomb down the field in order to open up the middle of the field, so you have that space basically in between the defenders and whatever you want, the midfielders.
No, I like the pigskin's okay. But again, talking about the Colombian, he did well. And I know you guys haven't talked to him in a little while in person. So, but we do know that he's not talking about he has 2 years left on his deal. So in one sense, he's doing a really good job at playing for his next contract. Yeah,
if he plays like this, he's going to get another 2-year deal, 100%, from somewhere. Maybe not for the Whitecaps, but definitely somewhere else.
Well, he said after the game he feels he's in his prime and this is the best that he's been in his career. And I don't know if you guys saw his Instagram. He did a picture of his heat map and his stats from Wednesday's game with just resume over it. So he's playing for a deal somewhere, whether here or wherever, and quite right. Look, if he wants to earn a contract somewhere by playing out of his skin and taking us into the playoffs, knock yourself out, Fredy. I'm all for it. Would I like him here again? Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I like Fredy.
I think he should complete the Cascadia trifecta and go to Portland. Or go to San Jose. You can open up coffee shops across, go 1 year Portland, go 1 year San Jose. You open up a coffee shop here, you open a coffee shop there. You spread it out a little bit.
You forget that some of the clubs in Cascadia, they have ideals that they'll live out when it comes to players from those other clubs. There's no way Portland would ever bring the Colombian to play for them, ever.
I genuinely would keep him here for another season. I think he's probably going to want a 2-year deal. He might only get offered 1 here. We're jumping way ahead of that. Anyway, the Whitecaps won 3 points, back-to-back wins, 3 wins out of the last 4, and it takes us to 7th place in the standings on 15 points from 12 games. We're ahead of both LA teams, Houston, Salt Lake, and San Jose Earthquakes, who I don't know what's happened to them, but they're currently sitting on a minus 16 goal difference, having given up 33 goals in 12 games. But that was our thoughts on the Whitecaps winning RSL. Let's hear a little bit now from both head coaches. So first of all, we're going to hear from RSL's Fredy Juarez, who wasn't a happy man on the sideline during the game. Let's see if he was any happier after the game. And then we'll hear from the gaffer himself, MDS.
What can be said for dominating just about all facets of the game, but finding yourself down a goal again this season?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating, right? I thought the first half we dominated, like you said, but it was a little too slow, just not aggressive enough. So we which is, 2 things happen. One, they gain a little bit of life potentially. They feel like they're in the game, which is okay. But then you got to make sure that you don't give up goals like we did. That you continue to keep going and not give up anything cheaply until it lands. Some of these games are tough because the opponent is playing for a result, right? And if they can sneak one and you give them an opportunity to sneak one, they will. But again, I thought, like you said, we controlled a lot of facets, but I just didn't think it was aggressive enough till after we went down a man almost. But again, two red cards in the last 2 games. We're better than that. We're more mature than that, and we'll get after it.
Fredy, you mentioned the 2 red cards. Is that something that you have to just kind of address with the team to maybe be a little bit more disciplined in situations where they could lead to a red card, or is that just something that you kind of just shake off game to game?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to address it. Because that's not us. And it was a little bit unlucky. It wasn't anything vicious today. It was a second yellow, and I don't so it's not like it's a discipline thing. I even the one last week with Douglas, I thought Douglas gets someone pushed on him and then he reacts with stretching his arms on it. I get it. Contact to the head, red. But, it's not a disciplinary thing. It's just, the heat of the moment. We kind of today it's a second yellow, and I know Bex knows better than that. He knows he's a professional. He feels bad about it. We'll mention it, and we just got to be mature, and that wasn't a problem of ours last year. So we got to make sure that we get back to just containing ourselves in situations, not putting ourselves in those situations when we have a yellow ready. We just got to be a little bit smarter.
I felt that in the first half, we were a little bit disconnected in the midfield. What I mean by that is our white players didn't connect overall well with the midfielders. And when Rusnak and Kralic were coming in pockets, they were creating problems to us. And we left a little bit too much in those moments. Rusty and Bikel alone dealing with numbers there. We were able to get out of the first half with the 0-0. We had 2 good half chances, especially one from Fredy where it's a great block from their defender. Then I felt we came on in the second half better. We scored the first goal in a great play. And then when the red card comes, it's so tricky. In soccer, a red card doesn't mean that everything's under control. You then have a team that has nothing to lose. You have a team that is home and came from a 5-0 home loss, so they have absolutely nothing to lose. They want to go at everything, and we felt a little bit of fatigue in some moment, but we were able to react well. Salt Lake, when they did the 1-1, dropped a little bit, gave us a little bit more the possession. We were able, in a very good play again, to score the 2-1. And then what I have to say is, did I like the moment that we have to suffer to get the 3 points? No. But did I like the fact that after 3 games in 8 days and travel and recovering so fast, coming and see a group of players that fought so much to stay with the 3 points and give everything they had? The attitude to keep the win was very good. We suffered to get it, but it was very good, the attitude. And that's what I told the team. I said, it's not going to be nice or run being on the road for 2 months, playing 12 games on the road, because our home games are not home games. And to get the most important thing is, how can we get results? And the personality and attitude of the players were very good.
Obviously, this is the first time you've had back-to-back wins all season. You talked the other day about wanting to go back-to-back, and even more than that. What does getting 2 in a row do for this group at such a challenging time in the schedule?
Belief. Let's not forget, it's still 3 out of 4. After a period where you lost 3 in a row in the East, only a group with a strong mentality could react like that. Groups with weak mentalities don't respond to that. So only groups with strong mentalities. At the end, it's 3 wins out of 4. And we have to understand that what's coming next is still hard. It's still a challenge. We have to be strong and keep going.
He's the gaffer. You can try it on with him. He's the gaffer. Even when he's on a limb. He's the gaffer. When his back's against the wall, has the answer to it all.
So the gaffers there, Fredy Juarez and Marc Dos Santos. So a couple of things that Mark mentioned there. I mean, he was asked by Gemma how he felt during that 9 minutes of stoppage time. And one of the quotes of the night from him, because there's another good one as well. I'm 43 and I'm going to be 61 after that game, because he just felt stoppage time went so slowly. He said he was looking at his watch and it's like, how's there still 4 minutes to go? I felt like that watching it on the couch as well.
There are a number of MLS games that I feel like where, only 3 minutes, 4 minutes went by. But yeah, I was surprised the 9 minutes, they added 9 minutes, but I guess that, they had the break there. But I'm surprised. Like, I feel like every time the Whitecaps are in the league going into stoppage time, there's still going to be a lot of minutes. So I'm not always fully surprised about the minutes that get added on. Fredy Juarez, I was going to ask, did he sound like he was going to break any printers or print any printers?
No, those days are sadly gone down, mate.
Different times in Salt Lake. There was the long, like at least good 2 minute stoppage for when Hasal got kicked in the head.
Yeah.
So there was some considerable time, but yeah, 9 minutes did feel or did seem a little bit excessive. It's always awkward when you're watching a game. You're like, oh, we're going into the 100th minute, and you're like, and there's not even extra time and penalties coming.
But the thing is, with the 100th minute, that's when Kai Kamara scores most of his goals.
True, but he'll be doing it for another club. Off to Minnesota. I'm sure we'll talk about that in the next part as well. Got a tweet in from eSkyBueller92 who says, the Whitecaps have quickly figured out a winning formula. Get the other team to take a red card. He feels that is probably not sustainable though. But MDS was asked after the game about, that's two wins in a row, 2 games where your opponents have had a player sent off. What are you putting that down to? And you'll like this one, Zach. He said he prays for it before every game, and obviously his prayers are getting answered.
Oh my, that's an interesting response.
He was quipping.
Yeah. No, I mean that's very true. And we've said this in the past. There's a number of things from what the Whitecaps have been doing over this last little bit that aren't replicable, and obviously having your opponent have a player sent off would be one of them. However, to their credit, there are a number of things that they have been doing that are replicable. They are repeatable. That they can continue to do. And so I think these last couple of games, you've seen them. I think work hard and work for each other and stick to the game plan more than we have, in what has been a chaotic 2020, and I think than we saw a lot in 2019.
Yeah, and it seems like they have a good mixture of players now. I don't want to say that the Inbal Mwango is the player that maybe didn't fit, but it seemed like that some of the players that they had earlier didn't really fit into the system. Like personally, for me, Ali Adnan at left back in this system doesn't work, but at left wing, he does work. And that's why I would like to see that more often going forward, like keep continuing that. So that's what sometimes the system doesn't work with the players, even though you think they are the right players for the system.
I think the players have rallied since that game in Toronto, right? Where they had the team meeting, with the coaches, and they had a meeting on their own. For the most part, they've really rallied since that. Now, whether that's they're more committed, or they realize that they're playing for their current job or for future, contracts or whatever. But that has been a bit of a turning point.
That's a good point, actually, Zach, because often it just needs these clear the air meetings and the senior guys to stand up and go, what the hell is going on with you guys? We need to get this sorted. Whatever was said, it's worked. Whatever's happening, it's worked.
It seems like it worked, but the problem is that then you have that Montreal game where everything collapses, like Lucas Cavallini loses it, and you're thinking, did that actually team talk work, or was it just an aberration? But now after 3-4 games, now it seems like it is working. Maybe that one game was the one outside the normal box, what's going on. Maybe he just lost it for that one game, but everything else is working out well.
But I mean, we're saying that it's working, but I mean, I'll read you this tweet from Cana Pauli, who said, win or lose, they look like crap. Lucky to win against a very, very mediocre 10-man RSL side. It looked like the Caps played with 10. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't a great performance. I've talked about, I don't care, just as long as you grind out a win. It doesn't feel sustainable, but we're going to be facing teams that's going to have some players playing on fumes, basically, because these games are coming up every 3 or 4 days.
And the thing is like, I can't remember. Like, I didn't watch every San Francisco Deltas game back in the day.
You
but
didn't?
They didn't. No, I didn't. But the games the highlights you see and the games you see, like, 'cause I watched a lot of highlights after. They weren't the most spectacular team, but they won a championship.
Mm-hmm.
Ottawa wasn't back when MDS coached them. They weren't a spectacular team, but they won a championship. So that kind of has a theme there where they're not going to play the most beautiful game, but they do get results. Now the thing is in the MLS, you need to have that higher level of talent in order to get those results, where you don't need those in the lower leagues. But so that's where the difference is here. But they do have those moments where they're not playing the great, but they get the results.
Yeah, I think I can't remember if we talked about this earlier on WhatsApp or not, or it was another conversation I was having. But like, yeah, this was not like a pretty win. Like, the game as a whole was not like a great game to watch. The goals, especially the match winner, was nice. And if you're from Salt Lake, the other one was okay, but their goal was okay. But like, the game itself was not really great. But again, what's most important is winning and getting the 3 points, which we all know Michael's totally in favor of. However, football and MLS is more than just the results. Now, because you need to draw people in, you need to engage people, you need to make people fall in love with your club and want to passionately follow it. Or at least most MLS clubs do. Maybe some don't. But because it's a pandemic year, this is really different, because in one sense, it doesn't matter if people aren't buying. I mean, Salt Lake, we talked about their 4,000 capacity or whatever, and they only drew 3,400. But, for Vancouver, they can't have anyone in the stadium. So does it matter how they play, as long as they're getting the result? I think if you ask MDS, I think he would be like, I don't care that it wasn't champagne football. We got the 3 points we need that put us into a playoff spot again. So for right now, I think it serves its purpose, and it's fine. It's more long term what you want to do, where you want to go as a football club, when you have to ask some of those deeper questions.
That's all we're going to kind of break down the game. We'll take a little break now, and we'll come back in the next part just to look at some of the Whitecaps news that's come out this week, but also just a couple of things about moving forward and chat about the kind of possible Montero partnership going forward as well. So we will be back with that after this.
Hi, I'm Lucas Cavallini. You're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Bubble pan, ever since your bubble pan, I've gone ex-directory, just in case you need me. Swivel chair, in your leather swivel chair, you can turn your back on me, leave me in the out tray. She's the main man in the office in the city, and she treats me like I'm just another lackey. But I could put a tennis racket up against my face and pretend that I'm Kendo Nagasaki.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's the first of tonight's 3 of a Kind songs. For anyone that's a new listener, or if you just need a refresher, at the start of parts 3, 4 and 5, we'll be playing you a song that is connected to each other in some way. Your job over the next couple of parts is to work out A, what the connection is, and B, if you can work it out after the first 2 songs, what might the third song be? So we've kicked off tonight's 3 of a Kind with a song from 1991 from AFTN favourites Half Man Half Biscuit, Everything's AOR from McIntyre, Threadmore and Davitt album. And I won't go into too much about the lyrics there, but all I'll say is the lyrics are a big, big clue to what this week's link is. And it was something I used to do myself as a kid. I'll explain more in part 5. But let's get back into the football chat now, back into the Whitecaps chat. And we're going to unpack a couple of things in this part about the Whitecaps going forward, in all senses of that, what the future might hold in store games-wise, and also moving forward in an attacking sense. Because we've seen in RSL a great budding partnership between Lucas Cavallini and Fredy Montero, and we'll talk about them in a sec. But first of all, I want to play some of the post-game audio from the pair of them, where they're just talking about their friendship, their partnership, what they bring to each other on the pitch. Some interesting stuff there, and if you're a Whitecaps fan, I genuinely think it's pretty exciting to hear this. The relationship that you've got with Fredy off the pitch, do you feel we're now starting to see the benefits of that on the pitch?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's an honor to play with such a quality player. To me, is the most talented on the team. You could say that. A lot of experience, obviously playing in Europe. Being a goal scorer, it's great to play alongside him because obviously our relationship off the field is good, but on the field we know each other well, and today we did a lot of interesting stuff together, and it's good to work with Fredy.
Your partnership with Fredy Montero, why do you think it's been so successful in such a small sample size? And do you think you guys can kind of form a formidable duo where you guys kind of carry the team's offense going forward?
Yeah, like I said, with Fredy, we have a good relationship on and off the pitch, and not only does it come from only us two, it comes from the team and the support from our teammates and the good attitude they showed today. Going forward, hopefully we continue to be like this. Fredy knows me well. Me and Fredy, we try to, practice a lot together, train together, trying to memorize each other's runs and positions on the field. So we're always like a step ahead of the other team.
Looking at the relationship you've got with Cava, he spoke very highly of you there just now. I know that the two of you are friends off the pitch. Can you just speak a little bit about just the relationship you have both on and off the pitch? Cava talked about he's kind of trying to memorize what runs you make and everything like that. It certainly looks like the beginning of what could be a very fruitful partnership for the team.
Cava is a great guy. We created that connection outside of the field, and I see myself on him when I was that age, hungry, to get some goals and show what he's capable of. And of course, he had the talent, to play in another league in Europe. I believe that he's looking forward to it. We just need to help him. I've been in his shoes when you don't get service, when you don't get the ball. But now I'm in a different role in this team, and I'm happy to help him, to get his high level. Because if he's good, the team is going to be good as well. So I'm happy for him.
So Lucas Cavallini and Fredy Montero there just chatting about their on and off pitch relationship. So Cava said after the game that it's an honour to play with a player like Fredy Montero. He says to him he's the most talented man in the team, with experience playing in Europe, being a goal scorer, and he says it's great to play alongside of him. And he said that the relationship off the field is good, and that on the field they know each other so well, and that Cava's been trying to memorise the kind of runs that Fredy does. They practice together a lot, they train together a lot. Now obviously both of them did not go down to Orlando, so they were here training, and I do feel that bond has really kind of helped him and kind of built up this relationship and this partnership, and I'm genuinely excited to see what these two can do together on the pitch in a Whitecaps shirt.
Yeah, and sometimes the connection doesn't have to be on the pitch. Like it could be built off the pitch, where you have that connection, and then you can't translate that on the pitch. So I think that probably has a lot to do with it. It's just hard to see where it fits. Obviously, in this kind of situation, that it's late in the game, they brought Cava on and everything like that, so that's understandable. But to start a game, do you want to play Montero in that number 10 spot, like behind the striker, maybe on a secondary striker? Do you want to do that, or do you want to have somebody who's more of a midfielder? And that's the question where you got to figure out if the two midfielders behind Montero, if you do that, are they able to control the play? Like if it's a Tybert and a Bikel like today, or a Tybert and a Owusu or something like that, is that going to be good enough, or do they have to play both Owusu and a Bikel, and will that be good enough? So it's a matter of figuring out this time where the fit is, if you're going to play Montero behind Cavallini, or do you go a flat 4-4-2, and does that give you a better shot at what you're looking for? Because I think in the past, 4-4-2 has probably been their worst, what they have the worst for record-wise when they play a 4-4-2, if I'm not mistaken.
Definitely. I mean, I tweeted out tonight, for me, this would be the most exciting Whitecaps lineup, and I think it would be a one that could get a lot of points done. So we won't look at the defence. So you've got keeper, back four. So then you've got a three-man midfield of Tybert, Bikel and Baldissimo. Then in front of them, you've got the three of Dahomey, Montero in a kind of 10 role, and then Milinkovic on the other wing. And then up front, you've got Lucas Cavallini. That would be exciting. The only problem with that is a 4-3-3-1 formation, which needs 12 players on the pitch, and we're apparently not allowed to do that.
Not at this point, but you never know what happens with MLS. Maybe you can offer some TAM or GAM to somebody and you can get that 12th player on.
But like in all seriousness, an attacking front four off that, Cava, Montero, Dahomey, Milinkovic, that is exciting, and that can do a lot of damage in the league. And I asked MDS about that after the game, and here's what he said about that. You talked there about the midfield disconnect that you saw in the first half. In the second half, and just in the last two games, the front four, if you wanted to look at that, of a kind of Cavallini, Montero, Dahomey and Milinkovic, looks a very exciting prospect. But to be able to get them on the pitch would appear to leave more chance of a midfield disconnect. I mean, how do you address that to get the players you want actually on the pitch?
Yeah, it's a good point. You also have to take a little bit of risk, Michael. You have to, in soccer, if you take away something, you lose in another side. Then, look at the end. We scored 3 + 2 + 3 again, +2 again. But it's something that definitely needs to be addressed. Let me give you a clear example. Imagine that their right back has the ball. Herrera has the ball on the right side, and Ali he puts pressure there. We have to work out the opposite midfielder, being Dajome, comes across to help Bikel and Rusty, and the two forwards not staying in the same line to bring more numbers there. But it's going to be a balance. But I don't want to take away what the team believes in also, that we have pieces that could be dangerous, exciting, and we have to find the balance, and we have to work on it, because I think that we could still defend much better with the attacking pieces we have. And I don't want to be in a position that we have to take one of these attacking players out just because we're scared of other areas. I prefer that we try to solve the game with goals when we can. And then, like we did at the end, if we have to bring a third center back or another midfielder to try to close the game, we do that. But it's a great point. It's really a balance. If you add another midfielder, then you lose support to our number 9. And look, right now it's the first time after MLS is back that we have all the group working together, all the players together, and we could slowly work on what we want to be about. And it's better to do that with wins than to do that with losses.
So basically, MDS is saying, yeah, they are exciting, and it's about finding that balance, because you want to keep that attacking threat, but you also need to have some defensive shape, and then you also need some midfield creativity, but a midfield that will come back and help the defence. So he says he doesn't want to sacrifice someone in the midfield to then put more pressure on the defence, but then if you don't do that, you're sacrificing a member of the attack. And I think that is really, fatigue and stuff aside, genuinely the biggest problem the Whitecaps have just now is how do you fit the pieces that they need to have on the pitch into an actual starting 11?
Yeah, and it seems like that they don't have the all-around player that can go do everything. Like, I know a lot of people don't like the term jack of all trades because that sense essentially means that they're good, a little bit good at everything, but they're not really spectacular at everything.
Well, yeah, because the second part of that phrase is master of none. So
yeah, master of none. Yeah, exactly. So, but the thing is, sometimes you need a jack of all trades, especially in a game like football, because that helps you in both aspects of the game. Because there's not just one master, like there's not one thing that you can be a master of. You have to be good at everything. Like we talked about Montero, we joked about it before. Do you really want Montero defending in the box? Because that was the game against Colorado a year ago or a couple of years ago, whatever, where he caused one penalty and then he pushed Nowitzki into another Colorado player to cause another penalty. So do you really want a Montero playing defending or whatever, where he gives up free kicks or yellow cards or gets sent off or something like that? So it's really a balancing act of where you can, put that into play or where you want to actually be a little bit more careful.
No, I mean, the Colombian is not that. I mean, I think he's in good form because, yeah, he's playing for a contract. But, I mean, the sort of jack of all trades the Whitecaps have had over the years is probably Russell Tybert, right? He's a player that they've shifted from, left back, center, midfield, wing, other places in the midfield, but yeah, you're right, Steve. They don't have a lot of players that are really, maybe can do that well enough, I guess.
Well-rounded kind of, you can run.
Yeah. But you guys are right. When you're talking about, they need to get, I think a part of it is they need to get the formation right. And in, just under 2 years or whatever, one of the biggest struggles MDS has had is kind of this internal struggle of playing the way he wants to play and playing what is probably best for the players that he has in the squad. And I think we've seen him be maybe a little more flexible, it feels like he's been a little more flexible this year in terms of leaning more towards the latter. And I think he's gotten, some better results. I mean, our good friend Naveed is fond of telling us in our live post-game chats of his record and how it hasn't been great, right? I think was tonight his 12th win as a coach.
I can't remember anymore.
It might have been the last game. It was his 12th, but still, that's like what Martin Rennie did in 1 year, kind of thing. So, but no, fitting players in what's going to work for the team it still seems to be a challenge. Now tonight, it feels like even though the performances weren't maybe optimal, they took a step in the right direction with sort of 4-2-3-1 and having Adnan not play left back. Having him move further up the pitch and allowing Gutierrez to play, and probably making some better choices across the back four as a whole. But yeah, what is the best going forward? Yeah, I think what we would say right now might be different than the last time we had this conversation like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
And Inbaum is one of the best examples of that, because Inbaum was brought in. Was he brought in to fit a system, or was he brought in to be able to be sold on? And because he definitely, there were a lot of moments where he didn't look like he fit the system, where he was able to play with the role they wanted him to play. And we mentioned him on and on and on. And then he goes over to Russia, and his first game, he scores a golazo. So,
and he's done really well since in the subsequent games as well.
And he's mentioned that to a few reporters apparently too. So, so that's the thing, that is it the system they want to fit, or do they want to develop players? Are they going to be, what are they going to search for when they bring in new players down the road?
I mean, I think the 4-2-3-1 is what works from an attacking sense, but I don't think we necessarily have the midfielders that are going to be beneficial to the team for that too, from a defensive sense. And that's definitely the toughest thing for MDS going forward.
How so, Michael? What do you mean we don't have the defensive players in the midfield for that?
Like Baldy, I think, can do the job. Like we need a destroyer in there. Somebody, or even somebody that, if you're going to have the fullbacks going forward as well, which I'm not sure we will as much if you've got the attackers that we had on the pitch tonight, but you want someone like a Matthias Laba that sits in front of the defence. Baldy could do that, but then I also think that's a waste of his talents when you see his distribution and stuff of tonight. I'm hoping, I thought Owusu would be that kind of guy. So Owusu and Baldy would be those two that I could think they've got the engine to go forward, go back, do what they need to do. Bikel, it's too early to say if he can be that guy. Again, I'm hoping he can. Owusu hasn't lived up to it. And I don't think we've got the consistency enough from the midfielders to have what we need. Maybe it's just a case of rotating them out. I'm just trying to get the best of them in small bursts and then just seeing what we can do.
I think for right now, you probably go with Bikel and Baldy in the double pivot role there. And I think that's where you get the best of, from what they have right now, that's where you get the best from them and from those players and that formation.
Yeah, definitely. Last little bit just to say about the kind of Montero Cavallini relationship. Just something that Fredy said afterwards, that he talked that he sees a lot of himself in Cava from when he was younger. He says that he feels Cava's hungry to get goals. He's got a talent to play in another league like in Europe, and he wants to help him get the service that he needs and to be the player that he can be. And I think that's fantastic. And I genuinely believe that is what he's trying to do, as well as obviously earning a new contract, because they are good friends. And I mean, by hook or by crook, it's clicked. I asked Fredy after the game, did he feel that he's thriving just now as well because he's fresher, because he hasn't been playing? And he doesn't want to look at it that way. He's still the same player, etc., etc. But that has to come into it. He's fresh. And a lot of the defenders that he's going up against have been playing and bubbles and travelling and everything. So, I mean, he is going to get the benefit of them. He looks fresh and sharp out there. I don't want to say he looks like a new signing, because that's very Whitecaps-esque mid-season to say that when a player comes back from injury or being out of favour or something.
What was that from MDS? That whole transfer from within?
Yeah.
Was that a comment against what the club's approach right now, or was that just
you can read a lot into it? I don't know.
It's kind of a term used. Like, I think I even said that. I asked, I think, who was it? Sporting KC coach. Name is
Peter Vermees.
Yeah, Peter Vermees. Because last year they had a whole bunch of injuries to start the season, and I said, I was telling him, I was asking him, is this these people coming back from injury? Is it like a transfer? Is like new players coming in? And it is commonly known that, again, I don't know if it's known in Europe, but in North America, when you get a player coming back, it feels like a brand new player, because you've been playing half a season or 3/4 of a season without him, and then all of a sudden you get a brand new player back in because he wasn't with you the whole year.
Yeah, but that's a different situation. This is a club that has sold their best player for the best money that they've ever gotten, then invested part of it in a player, sold him for money.
What team did they sell him to, that best player?
To the best club in the world.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I just want to verify that.
Ruben Kazan?
Anyways, so when people are asking him these questions about that kind of stuff, they're not asking, they're asking, when are you going to bring in more players, not just get players back from it. It seems like a really, really awkward answer. Sorry to take that on a tangent.
That's fine. But we're used to it. But, I mean, like the midfield, MDS said after the game that he felt they were disconnected at times, and he talked about the best formation. He wants to maximise everybody to their fullest potential. Now, one player who will not be in any formation going forward in a Whitecaps jersey is Jordi Reyna, who surprisingly, in some sense, because it happened on a Saturday morning, has gone to DC United. The Whitecaps are getting $400,000 in GAM, 2021 GAM, and if Reyna signs a contract to be with DC next year, they'll get more GAM. if he gets sold on to out with the league, then they'll get a percentage of that as well. I thought it was a fantastic piece of business by the Whitecaps. They had to give up an international spot in return for that. And then someone pointed out that earlier this year they actually paid a lot of money for an international spot. So it maybe was not as good bit of business as it first came across. All of that aside, for me, getting rid of Jordi Reyna is a good bit of business because I'm glad to see the back of him. I don't think he was consistent enough. There's no doubt he is a great player. He's skillful, maybe one of the most skillful players on the team. But what he brought, attitude-wise, antics-wise, like breaking club rules, playing in Andy Livingston Park, all that kind of stuff, other stuff as well that's going on before it. I'm just glad that he's gone. The general consensus when I tweeted stuff out this morning about it, pretty much everyone was quite glad to see the back of him, and there was very few people that were disappointed by this. So, I mean, that's very telling in itself. And I just want to bring you a little bit of audio now from MDS, just talking about Reyna moving on and revealing that he could actually have moved on earlier this year. And as far as this trade's concerned, everybody's happy with it. Everybody seems to be a winner from it. Here's what MDS had to say.
No, he never asked to be moved. He never asked to be moved. He had an opportunity in the beginning of the year to go to another club, and it didn't work out. But then as soon as he stayed, his mind was here. We felt with Jordi, it's a player with value. It's a player that has talent, and it's a good kid. But we felt that the opportunity that DC was giving us, also thinking about the pieces that we need moving forward, was a good opportunity for us. And Jordi was in the club for about 4 years, so it was good for everybody. It's a new chapter for Jordi. It's a good move for us in the cap, so everybody's happy. When you do a move where everybody's happy, it's good for everyone.
So MDS there, just giving his thoughts on the Reyna trade. I've given my thoughts. What do you guys make of it all?
Well, the thing is, what I saw was that a lot of people were disappointed that it wasn't a player coming back. But like we talked about in the previous podcast, that some players probably don't want to come here, and it's not because of COVID or quarantining. The reputation of this franchise. Sorry, Zach would have been so mad. But essentially, it's turned into a franchise. You got to admit that. But the reputation of this club and the organization is not well, and it's not even that you can get rid of players and that helps the franchise, because the more you get rid of players, the more they spread the reputation of how poor it is. So, and this is going to happen again probably with Jordi Reyna, even though in this case it might be Jordi Reyna's fault that he didn't last in this club. It's clearly that there were some issues, especially when they went out east. I don't know if he had an issue with the time difference or setting the alarm clock or whatever the case is, but clearly there was some issue in Toronto where he didn't even, I think he didn't even make the 18 at all, and because of that he basically fell out of favor. There was times in Orlando where he did show something, and he was probably could have been considered their best player. But once he got back to Canada and he moved to they went East Coast, it kind of fell apart really quickly. It's amazing how quickly it fell apart. There's got to be some kind of story about what happened there that they can put into a documentary down the road.
Michael, I get why people maybe are, of the perspective that they're happy that he's not here. He played for the original Deadpool. That's one reason why I'm happy he's not here. There's the whole, being involved in unfortunate circumstances where I don't think things ever really were fully explained, not that they need to be explained to the public in all cases, but that whole situation back in his homeland was really, I think, disturbing to hear about. Again, not knowing the full details of all that. But, and then, like you guys said, his inconsistency, sure. But he was also, you might say he was not consistent enough, but he was also more consistent, creative and attacking than most of the players in at least the last, the post Pedro era at the Vancouver Whitecaps. So it's hard to be so negative in that sense about someone who, not as consistent as you want, but more consistent than anyone else you have. But then, the attitude, the not showing up to meetings, the Andy Livingston Park thing, I think was really, really just poor and kind of inexcusable. Yeah, so I guess in one sense, like, I understand why people are happy he's not here. I think what people, and I don't have the pulse on this, maybe like you do, Michael, but you can be happy he's gone, but are you really happy with the return that they got? I don't think what they got is sufficient for what they had, to be frank.
I think the biggest complaint, people would like to have seen a player coming back, but you look at the DC roster, and I'm not sure there's a lot of players you'd want from that. So, I mean, there still might be another part of this trade in the works that we don't know of, that the Whitecaps have been working with another team just now. I don't know. I mean, MDS said that he feels that they've got the weapons at the club just now, that mean losing him at this point of the season is not that big a deal.
Yeah, that rings hollow a little bit. I'm sorry. It just does. I mean, a couple of people have messaged me today just saying, like, it just feels like because it's a pandemic year, they're just like stripping some assets away.
Yeah, it feels like they're treading water at this point, where they just want to just get through the season. The thing is, with them acquiring players, if you're going to acquire a player, you were going to acquire it when you sold your designated player for a profit, even at that point. If you're not going to acquire a player at that point, or you had somebody, and you knew it was coming, because you knew he wanted to go to Europe, whether Europe or Russia, or whatever you want to call it. You knew he wanted to go, so you should have had somebody on your list that wanted to come here immediately. Whether
they knew that was happening, and they've chosen not to do anything. Now, obviously, the pandemic plays a role, but it's hard to believe that they had something lined up that would have been sufficient based on what they have done and how they've approached things.
And if they did, I don't want to keep piling on them, because obviously they've probably done their thing. If you know that you're getting a player, and there's somebody like a South American or a Brazilian, or obviously Brazil is part of South America, I should say that, but like a Central American or a South American that's ready to come to Vancouver or Canada, you don't think that they would want to come, considering what's going on in the world? Like we do have a better reputation than anywhere else. Yeah, so if you're saying you're scouting all over the world, Canada's one of the best places to come to and bring your families at this point. Forget about before. For now, the numbers aren't looking that rosy, but in comparison to other countries, they're still fine. They're still better than in other places. My biggest disappointment about Reina moving on is I never ever got to do the thing I wanted to do with him, which was to get him to read some stuff about Paddington Bear, and that will always haunt me. But well, talking of haunting, the Whitecaps have a couple of games coming up in the next week before our next show comes out, and the second of those is our rogue home game, the ghost game, the Monopoly home game. I just love MDS comes up with a different phrase to describe it every time he talks about it, because he's clearly pissed off and knows it's not a home game. Before that, though, we've got an easy game coming up on Wednesday, guys. We're playing a team that's below us in the standings, LAFC. So, I mean, that should be an easy 3 points. Or are they going to be out for, like, ripping a new one to us? I don't know. We won't delve into that too much, but here's my concern. We're going to just wrap this bit up just by chatting about what's to come, some complications with what's to come. And for me, the biggest part of this is the fatigue of the players, because the players are going to get run into the ground, not just the Whitecaps, but across the league. You're playing 3 games in 8 days constantly now, it looks like, until November. And that's going to take a toll on players, especially when they can't just get out and enjoy cities as well. They're going to be kind of within mini bubbles and all this stuff that they can kind of do. I kind of broached that with MDS after the RSL game, so I'll just play what he said about that just now. You spoke about the fatigue there after the sending off, and it did look like a team that was struggling to know how to get out of their own half, and they weren't defending really deep. Is this, do you feel, though, just what we can expect from a lot of games for the rest of the year? Because teams are just going to get run into the ground.
I'm concerned with that, Michael. I feel that I saw in some games I was watching today some injuries. I'm concerned with the how much can the players go. It's not easy, and I hope that people that watch the games on TV understand that you might want to see sometimes a guy coming out in press or a guy pushing out. But we played on Wednesday, a game that we gave everything to win it. Then we had off on Thursday because it was the only time we could have given the players with a family time before this stretch of crazy 2 months. It was a light kind of session recovery to get back and travel and to play against a team that was here for a week and comes from an heavy loss. And it would never be easy. And where we have to see is the spirit, how much you could push and grind in the mix of the fatigue. And I think that I have to say that that's a proud moment. Now, we will have to pay a lot of attention to guys that are in red zones or danger zone. Rusty is in the red zone. There was a moment where Fredy maybe, but he seemed good after. But you'll have some players that we might have to pay very, very good attention to them.
So, MDS talking about fatigue, the schedule, demanding schedule for the rest of the season, and he said he's been watching games, he's concerned about players are getting injured, and just, it is tough. And he spoke as well about he has to try and find the right balance for playing the guys. He doesn't want to see players go into what he was referring to as the red zone or danger zone. So I guess that is when they're measuring all their kind of mechanisms and stuff as to how tired they are, how much they've got left in their tank. And you're going to have to use a lot of squad depth in the coming weeks. But it is a genuine concern, not for the Caps only, but for every single team. And I think the quality of play is going to suffer as a result.
Yeah, and you see it you don't have to watch the highlights. You can just see it in the actual results. Like I think, Michael, we were mentioning it prior to the game, that RSL, one game they win big. This is probably the most normal game they've had since the restart. Because one game they'll lose huge, and then one game they'll win huge and go forth and on. And then we have there was a game against Portland versus LAFC where Portland absolutely just on one goal just ran through LAFC, but it ended up being LAFC winning big on the game. Even though if you look at that one highlight, you think, oh, Portland destroyed them. Which is what I thought, because that's the only highlight I saw of the game.
I was exactly the same. I'd seen that highlight, and I thought, oh, wow, Portland's won and LAFC's lost again. And then I saw
and then you saw the score, and it was like 6-2 or something like that. I can't remember what exactly it was. But, yeah, it's an odd thing. Like, there's no consistency at all with the games right now. It's just not even MLS. In any sport you want to look at, the bubbles, all the bubble leagues, there is no consistency at all. People win one game huge and one game they'll win a game huge loss.
But yeah, I mean, it was 4-2 that LAFC beat Portland, and then Portland go out and score 6 goals today, and LAFC go and lose against Seattle. So everyone's going up and down, apart from a couple of teams. Sporting Kansas City, who lost to Dallas today, and they'd been doing well. And I'll just mention this. I'm on the mailing list for a lot of the MLS teams, so I get the post-game report. So Sporting Kansas City came in, and the headline was just, Johnny Russell scores 2 in Sporting KC loss. And I was like, that's tailored to me, just to make sure that I click into it, because they just mentioned that Johnny got a brace there. But I mean, you must be concerned, Zach, as to the toll that this is going to take in the players, both mentally and physically.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want a consistent team that, in a league around the world, just look at Alphonso Davies' team. They're always winning. But, you got to be concerned, not just for the Whitecaps, but you're right, around MLS, the way that this is all going to take a toll with what's happening in terms of how their lives are being impacted because of the pandemic. There's also social unrest, I guess, is maybe one way to describe of what's happening in the U.S. or especially in different places, right? Like, and then the wildfire thing just happens. Yeah, there's all these things that kind of create or add stress to life. In terms of the three, playing 3 games every week or whatever, they're footballers, and I don't think that's. I know every week for a number of weeks in a row, maybe a little bit much for MLS players, but most football clubs around the world get into that rhythm where they're in 3 games a week, especially at the top level. So I don't think asking players to go to do that is necessarily a bad thing, unless you're doing like Thierry Henry, where it's like the same starting 11 is starting every game and playing like 80+% of the game. But it'll be interesting to see how MDS and the coaches kind of approach this and help their players overcome the potential stress.
Totally. I mean, it's going to be difficult. So we heard a little bit from MDS earlier chatting about fatigue. Let's just bring you a little bit of audio now where I asked him just about some of the strange results we've seen in MLS, and is that something that we can maybe expect to see now over the course of the season?
Yeah, Michael, I really think, it's so difficult to make a judgment on. Can you guys hear me well? Can you guys hear me well? Yeah. So I really think that it's such a kind of lottery in moments. You have to understand, traveling the day you play in a plane, being close to 2 hours in a plane, it's weird. It's weird. Land, go to an hotel where you're going to be a couple of hours there before you go to the stadium. I know a lot of teams, every team that's going away is doing that. So for us, it's going to be a new experience. It's hard for me to say how that affects the fatigue, how that affects the team, and how do teams answer to that. And that we're going to live it. But when I look at other teams play, it's hard for me to think that the teams are playing at their full physical and mental capacity. Because right now, playing every 3 days, such a condensed schedule with the type of traveling in and out, for sure it affects fatigue, for sure it affects fitness levels, concentration levels in some moments. And that is something that is a new experience for all of us. And maybe that's the reason why some results have been kind of different compared with a normal season, I would say.
Strange times indeed. And they're only going to get stranger as Vancouver call Portland home. And then at the end of this Portland game, I'd asked Marc, because I was curious and I hadn't seen it anywhere, and I'd asked him what happens after that, because we know that they're going to be playing games in Portland, just like Toronto's going to be playing in Connecticut and Montreal's playing in New York. It's not all official. They had to wait for border announcements. That's now been extended, etc., etc. But I was wondering about setting off on this trip as to whether they would be able to get back to Vancouver before going out to the next one, how it would affect quarantine and everything like that. And then Marc told me on Friday, oh yeah, there is an opportunity to come back for 2 or 3 days. And I was a little bit confused about that. So I've clarified it with Nathan and the Caps. So basically, following the Portland game, players have 2 choices. One, they can travel back to Vancouver, go into quarantine for 2 or 3 days, see their immediate family, and then travel back to the US to resume training. Or secondly, they can stay in the US and just train down there and do all the stuff. Everything's been communicated with all the players and staff. They know that this is the thing. So I was like a bit confused as how can they come back for 2 or 3 days and not 14? And the reason that they don't need to is because it's both charter flights in and charter flights out. The person then that they're going to stay with, like wife, family or whatever, they're quarantining in their residence. So that means that not everyone in the residence has to quarantine unless you're showing symptoms. And they are getting tested regularly. and they know that they don't have it, etc., etc., and they've had regular communications with all levels of government and local health authorities. So that clears that up. And I guess if there's gaps in the schedule, they might be able to go and visit family for 2 or 3 days at a time in between this. So that's great. And from a mental health point of view, I think it's fantastic. Still think it's terrible we have to play games out of the US, but it's something. It is what it is. It's going to just be tough, and I guess everyone just has to make the best of it as they can. It's whether some people at some point might just have enough and say, I can't do this. I need to get back to my family.
Yeah, but the 2 or 3 days, I think that will help a little bit. And the fact is that, I know you were talking to me about it too. And the fact is that they just have to they'll come back, spend the 2 or 3 days. They're just in the 2 or 3 days in their house. They won't, socialize outside the house. No trips to Livingston Park or whatever. And basically that's it. And then they just get back on the flight and they go back to where they are. So in that case, it kind of compacts the groups that you're with and everything like that. You're not spending time out. They're not going to be allowed to go to a restaurant or bar or anything like that. It's basically everything's in the house in that case. So it kind of works out. And I think families, players with families, they will probably take advantage of that. Obviously, single younger kids probably will just stay in Portland or wherever they're going to stay.
Well, I guess we'll have to see how everything plays out. That is it for the Whitecaps and MLS chat for tonight's show. We're going to be turning our attention to the Canadian Premier League next. And we're going to have a little bit of wavelength as well. Then we're also going to be hearing from the CPL Commissioner David Clanahan in the next part. And we'll be back with that after this.
Hi, I'm Mark Anthony Kay, and you're listening to the AFTN radio show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part, it's the second of tonight's Three of a Kind selection. From 2016, by a band called Cheap Pop. That was Daniel Bryan Danielson. Catchy little number, I'm sure you'll agree. Have you been able to work out what the link is yet? So we kicked off part 3 with Everything's AOR from Half Man Half Biscuit. Cheap Pop there with Daniel Bryan Danielson. If you think you know what the link is, can you work out what the song might be that kicks off part 5? Find out what that song is very soon. But before we get back into the football chat, I'm going to keep the musical theme going because it's time now for this week's Wavelength. And as regular listeners will know, it's September. That can only mean one thing. Much like March, it's Football Violence Awareness Month here at AFTN. And this week, we are bringing you a song by a band making an impassioned plea to stop the fighting on the terraces, to stop the football violence. Where would Football Violence Awareness Month be if that was to happen? Well, let's hope we never find out. But we're going to play the song nonetheless. It's from 2001 by an English band called The Foamers. It's from their EP entitled Football. And this is the title track, Football. English band The Foamers there with their song Football from 2001, the penultimate song in this month's Football Violence Awareness Month. We'll be back with the final selection on next week's show. But for now, let's get back to the football chat, and we're moving away from the Whitecaps, we're moving away from MLS, we're flying out east to Prince Edward Island, where the Canadian Premier League's Island Games have been taking place for the past 4 or 5 weeks. Everything wrapped up on Saturday. Forge FC were crowned 2020 champions, repeating their success from 2019. We're going to talk a lot more about that in the final part of tonight's show, but for this part, I'm wanting to bring you some selected highlights from CPL Commissioner David Clanahan's conference call that he had with media on Friday morning. So we're going to play you some snippets where he's talking about the success of the tournament, what lies ahead for the league, potential loan deals, the Canadian Championship fiasco that looms, and a lot more besides. So go and make yourself your favourite hot beverage, grab a chocolate digestive, sit back, and listen to the words of CPL Commissioner David Clanahan.
We are the league.
Can you give us your thoughts on how the tournament has gone so far? Obviously, it was a huge undertaking to put this on. Give us your take on it, and also, can you share what's next for the league after this? Future plans.
Sure. I'll try and get all of that out, Neil. First of all, I think the games have been fantastic here in PEI. I think they've been well played. I've been very pleased with the level of I'll call it parity, but the level of competition and from the teams. To have 7 teams still in the running on the final weekend of let's call it the first stage was unbelievable, and knowing that even Edmonton almost became a spoiler for Pacific FC. So it's been fantastic. I think the players have been excellent. They've played well, played hard. They've done everything they should have done as professionals. I think our coaches and the clubs have been fantastic, and obviously the referees from Canada Soccer have been outstanding as well, and they've done a great job. So I think overall it's been a great success, and most importantly, we've been welcomed here on the island, and we stuck to our health and safety protocols, and everyone's been very good. Not a positive test at all negative tests all throughout the games. So we did exactly what we said we were going to do, and that's the best plan you can do. Now for next year, I think going from here, obviously we still have the Canadian Championships to, once we crown a champion, we'll know who will face Toronto FC in the Canadian Championship. But that'll be decided where and when by Canada Soccer. And I think Canada Soccer made a great decision on putting the CPL champion against the MLS champion from Canada in a one-game final. And I think that's going to be exciting. And then we'll start to prepare, obviously, right away for next year, where I'm, you know me, Neil, I believe that the glass is always half full. I'm an eternal optimist, so to speak. So I'm approaching next year, hopefully, that we'll have fans in the stands, and that our supporters can see our teams play live, and that we'll be past this pandemic that we're dealing with today. So we'll see how that works, but that'll be plan A. But we'll obviously work to plan B and C. Right now, I'm approaching next year as if we will be playing starting in April, like we have in the last. We've planned for the first season, and obviously for this season before we were put on hold. So that's what we see happening.
First of all, congratulations on putting on what I think everyone has felt has been an absolutely fantastic tournament. It's been enjoyable watching it from afar. It kind of got me thinking, and I asked a few of the head coaches this already. A future competition like this, is that something you'd like to see maybe as a kind of pre-season event? Because it's 6 months before some of these guys are going to be maybe back in the pitch again. Tying it in maybe with another Canadian Championship or something like that?
Yeah, it's Michael. Listen. That's a great suggestion. Truthfully, and it's a brilliant idea because one of the things I worry about is how do you deal with this 6 months in between us starting to play again if we're able to start playing in April, right? And we saw a little bit of this when we were down in the Dominican Republic in our first year for preseason training. That was interesting, and this is even better build on that. So yeah, you never know. Maybe pull something like that off. I think we'd have to start to think about it and put a straw man around it to pull together a project plan. But it's a good idea because again, it's one thing to train, it's another thing to actually have game time, right, for the players. So yeah, you never know. I never say no to anything. So I think it would be very interesting. And certainly there's a break in some seasons right around the beginning of the year as well. So there could be opportunity there. It's a great idea.
Just as a follow-up then, a couple of the coaches, they've talked about maybe looking at ideas to try and get some of their younger players out on loan to Europe or something like that. Is that something the league is also actively looking at, maybe striking up a relationship with some leagues to get these guys some more playing time?
Yeah, well, we're already doing that at this point in time, right? We're working hand in hand with the clubs, right? With the strategy we have with the 21st club out of the UK has helped us bring in young internationals, but not, so the reciprocal has been now we're seeing clubs across the world saying, hey, we would like to take on some of the players. One of the young Jamaican players that was coming and couldn't get in because of the COVID restrictions, leaving Jamaica to get here in time in the quarantine and everything else. We've arranged for him to get a visa and to go and play in Scotland. And so he's playing. He's actually Dundee have signed him, and the British government has given him a visa for a working visa to play for Dundee, which should be very interesting for him. And then the idea is he's coming back to play for York 9 next year. So yeah, we're starting to see that happen. It is great to see even Canadian kids going and being able, or Canadian young men going to play overseas as well, and then coming back for us.
This style of kind of tournament going forward, I was wondering, you said you wouldn't say no to that. I was wondering if you had some interest, kind of like a PEI from cities or just from clubs within your league that would be interested in maybe taking on something like that, maybe in a preseason setup.
Yeah, I think Tristan, it's a good question, and I think yes, the answer is yes. We've already had a couple of clubs say they'd love to have almost an invitational tournament. It doesn't necessarily just have to be CPL clubs in it. It could be other clubs around the world if they were available at the time. So yeah, it could be an interesting way to do it.
David, I just wanted to have you unpack something you alluded to a little bit at the start of the call here, which is sort of the parity in the league right now. I mean, I don't think you could have really scripted it any better. You had, the round robin went down right to the last match weekend. Even the group stage did. How important was that for the league? Because last season was a bit of a two-horse race, and given the format that you've had here in PEI with that group stage that follows sort of the quote-unquote regular season, does that give you appetite to maybe fold something like that in for 2021, assuming we're sort of back to quote-unquote normal circumstances?
Yeah, I think from a normal circumstance perspective, I think we had a really good plan for this year. I mean, our schedule was tight. It was good. We were going to a one table league as opposed to a spring and then a summer fall. I think last year we were a lot closer than people thought we were when you looked at who was still in the running towards the end. There's no doubt that two teams, obviously Forge and Cavalry, their heads were kind of a little bit higher. They were head and shoulders above everybody else at the end. But it wasn't that they didn't run away with it right away. Although sometimes it felt like that, I would agree. So I think I wouldn't want to do this in addition to during a season. I don't think I want to do that. I'd like to keep the clubs focused on what they need to do from a league perspective. But I think there's other ways to augment it, off season or pre-season, things like that.
And just a quick follow-up, if I could, then I know last year was sort of you had the season divided into two with going straight to a final, and you had moved originally to a playoff format sort of before global events transpired. Are playoffs something that you want to stick with let's say through 2021? Is that high priority for you?
Yeah, I think, we're going to go back. We're going to go into 2021. If we get a full season in, we're going to do it exactly the way we had planned for 2020, because we spent a lot of time talking to our supporters and our fans, and they really took us to a single table and to the playoff format. So we think there's a good model there, and it's going to be exciting. We saw, the level of excitement that just in the format we used here. So I think we'll go back to exactly what we were doing at that point in time for 2021.
As we approach the final here tomorrow, we've got upwards of 20 players that you've had in the league this year from U Sports that have played in the CPL, including 7 that will be playing in the final tomorrow. And obviously HFX has the most in the league, so that's a terrific statement that they're in the final with that many players. How would you characterize the partnership that you've had with U Sports over the last 2 years, and how important would you say that partnership has been? And what would you say it says about the success of U Sports alum and U Sports draftees in the league the past 2 years?
So if I was going to be very short on it, Adam, I would say brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I think it's the partnership is vital to us. I think it's fantastic in the fact that, Alan, that we actually have this idea that we can actually have players come out and be able to get an education and play professional sport. It's groundbreaking for sure. It was groundbreaking at the time. No one else had ever done it, and I think we need to continue to do it going forward. It's been extremely successful for us, Alan. So again, I think brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
You touched on it in your first answer there, just talking about the future and the Canadian Championship that's coming up. Now, obviously, yesterday, TFC's president made comments that he was thinking the games might get played in December, maybe January, looking to have them at BMO Field. I know ultimately this lies with Canada Soccer, but it surely can't be ideal for the league and whoever wins the CPL title to be having to wait a couple of months to get this game played. Might end up having a whole lot of different players. How much say do you have in when this match will be played?
Well, let me say this, Michael. I have 3 thoughts on this whole thing. First of all, Canada Soccer, in our opinion, Canada Soccer made the best decision they could on how to handle the Canadian Championships this year. So we were very, very pleased with that. A little tongue-in-cheek, I told the MLS clubs I was actually disappointed because I thought maybe 2 CPL clubs would be in the final this year, but we had a good chuckle on that. But we're delighted at the CPL, Canadian Premier League, to have our champion play Toronto FC in the final. That's going to be a great game, and it's going to be great for Canadian soccer at the end of the day. The final date and location is still to be determined, right? And once we understand what the MLS schedule looks like, there's a lot of complexity to putting this whole thing together. So we look forward to the fact that Canada Soccer will make their decision, and they'll lay out where it's going to be and when it's going to happen, and we'll follow suit on that perspective. We trust the fact that Canada Soccer understands that our teams will stop playing for a while, and so I don't think Canada Soccer would want to see the scales tipped one way or the other, or put one club at a disadvantage versus the other. So we have full confidence in the fact that Canada Soccer will do the right thing, and as they have up to now.
I was just wondering, with your partnership with Macron for the kits. Obviously, this year you guys announced the kits, like some of them way earlier in the year. Obviously, you only played some teams 7 games. Are you guys going to be using the same kits for next year? Or do you have a plan to make completely new kits and reveal them sometime in 2021?
Well, we've already finished the design for our next set of kits, but you bring up a great point, Alex, because a lot of the fans and supporters haven't really got a chance to see their teams play live in these kits, right? And they're great kits. So I've been asked this question a number of times by the clubs, and I said when we finish the island games, we'll have a board of governors meeting and we'll decide what we want to do. Obviously, we want to do the right thing by our partner at Macron. They've been fantastic with us, and we're getting people from across the globe asking us about our kits because they think that are, the clubs have done a great job in the way that they've been very creative and innovative, and the themes that we come up with, they're really well liked across the globe. In fact, I joke, we have about a 70 club group of Macron, different football clubs around the world that deal with Macron. And I joke with Gianluca, who's the CEO at Macron. I said, I think we've upped your game a little bit by challenging you to do great kits for the CPL, because I'm seeing some great stuff across the globe from Macron now. So, and so that's been very good. And I would, since you brought up Macron, I'd also like to thank some of our other partners. Obviously Volkswagen and WestJet and New Era and some of the caps they've done for us, and of course Macron and the other supporters we've had has been fantastic. I also think we should tip our hat to some of our sponsors here on the island, whether it be Tourism PEI or Discover Charlottetown, or even the meetings and convention people in PEI. These people have been great, and they have supported us so well while we've been here. So thank you to all those people.
CPL Commissioner David Clanahan there. A lot to unpack from that, a lot to talk about from the CPL and the Island Games that, as I say, wrapped up on Saturday, and we will be back doing just that after this.
I'm David Edgar, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Later she was wearing my shirt in a photo shoot. I didn't even know that she was famous. How can someone so pretty be so dangerous? She's only 5 foot tall, but maybe 5'2" in her wrestling boots. And I hear she can even sing. She's the champ of everything. Why can't every girl be more like Alexa Bliss? It's like my heart is caught in a sleeper hold. Whoa, oh, oh. Why can't every girl be more like Alexa Bliss?
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this final part, it was the final song of tonight's Three of a Kind section. From this year, an album of the same name, it's Bowling for Soup with a song called Alexa Bliss. Did you work out what the connection was? We kicked off part 3 with Everything AOR from Half Man, Half Biscuit that was talking about putting a tennis racket to your face and pretending that you're Kendo Nagasaki. The old English wrestler Kendo Nagasaki, who I used to watch growing up on World of Sport in the 70s and 80s. We kicked off part 4 with a song by Cheap Pop called Daniel Bryan Danielson. Yes, about the wrestler from Washington State, Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson if you knew him on the Indies. And in part 5, Alexa Bliss, Bowling for Soup. The link this week was wrestlers. Did you get that link? I hope you did. If you didn't, we'll be back with another Three of a Kind next week. Steve, just a quick little bit of a wrestling chat to throw at you, because I know Zach won't care. What are you making of the whole Alexa Bliss Fiend storyline that's going on just now?
It is interesting, but they really haven't made the full connection yet. They're really like, the problem is that I feel like they're making an obvious connection, and they're not making a subtle. Either you connect it, or you make a very subtle connection, and they're making it too obvious, and it's like you're just waiting for it to happen at this point.
I know. It's like you want storylines to last for more than just a couple of weeks. But at the same time, it feels this is just dragging on. It's like, just get it done. We kind of know where it's going.
And this is where the opposite of the AEW storyline happening with, Hangman Page and Kenny Omega, where you don't know where it's going.
Yeah, it's
very
engrossing.
subtle. It's very subtle, so you don't know which way it's going to go. Is he actually going to turn on him? Is he going to attack him at one point? I thought he might attack him after the match this past week, but he didn't, and it didn't happen. He just walked off. So are they dragging it out? Who's going to be the ultimate bad guy or out of the group, or is it just are they going to reunite? There is a potential they're actually going to reunite as well. So
yeah,
that's where the difference of storyline telling is in one federation and another federation.
I mean, we don't want to bore everyone, especially Zach, but one thing that was mentioned by Kenny on commentary, that at one point Kenny said, this is a good match between two tag team wrestlers. So he doesn't consider Page as being a singles guy.
Exactly. And there were a number of times where he was saying, like, this is the point where I would rescue him from being pinned. And let's see if he can actually, or will he turn to the corner and try to find somebody to tag. So, yeah, there were very subtle nuances to the match and the way Kenny Omega was there. So that's why I think AEW is the best one right now.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, Zach must be as bored of listening to this as I am when he starts talking about Bundesliga. So let's get back to football. Let's get back to CPL and the great story that played out over the last couple of weeks on Prince Edward Island at the Island Games. It wrapped up on Saturday. We have 2020 Canadian Premier League champions, back-to-back winners, Forge FC, 2-0 win over Halifax Wanderers. The game was live on CBC this year, which was fantastic. Hopefully lots of folk got to watch. I think Forge probably deserved it for the way that they've been in this tournament. I felt for Halifax, I especially felt for Christian Oxner, their keeper, who just made a mistake that made it 2-0 to Forge. He'd had such a good game and such a good tournament, and he'll beat himself up for that, but he shouldn't, because he had a great game. But do you feel Forge were worthy winners and worthy of going back-to-back?
I'll go first, considering I know what Zach's going to say, that he doesn't like it happening. But I think Forge, in a way, I'm a person that doesn't like Forge either. I'm not a big fan of the way they were set up, but it's kind of good too, because you have that heel that keeps winning and everything like that. And then when you get that, baby face that's going to win, speaking of wrestling, obviously, when you're going to get that baby face that comes up big, and one of these years is going to become the champion and knock off this Forge, dynasty or whatever you want to call it, the early dynasty, it's going to be more satisfying that way too. Obviously, you'd like to see them lose a little bit sooner. You don't want it to go like 3-4 years. Hopefully it doesn't go that long. But if it's next year or the year after, it's going to be really satisfying to see somebody beat them and take them off their pedestal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, very happy for David Edgar. Like him a lot. But yeah, I'm not super big on Forge. I think Bobby's a good coach and everything. Don't get me wrong. And I agree with you guys that they're deserving winners this year. But yeah, I mean, I think all of Canada was, all of Canada outside of that part of the Golden Horseshoe was going for, Halifax.
Except those 15 people that were in the bar cheering them on.
Non-social distanced.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways, no, I'm sure they were complying by all local, regulations. Anyways, the tournament as a whole, though, I think the CPL did really well, like in general. I think they can be really happy with what they pulled off as a second-year league in a pandemic world. Obviously, the number of games is not conducive to their overall goal of actually, developing players. But all things considered, I think they did well, and I'm sure there's other leagues, on this continent that would have liked to have been able to do something similar, and some weren't or haven't been. So yeah, I think you need to congratulate them for that. We talked about it earlier, but I liked how they kind of went with a bit of a different format in terms of the 2-group stage. It was something different, and it actually played out, I think, meaningfully for them. With the last two, one of the 2 last games in the group stage being extremely meaningful, and the other one wasn't meaningful, but it was a great game to watch, especially if you like the color purple. And so, I don't know. I think they've done really well, and I look forward to what happens next year. Will more communities be able to join? What will sports look like, especially what will CPL look like in 2022? Depending on what they're allowed to do.
I mean, here's a question for you both then. Like, Forge are back-to-back just now, and something that struck me today was, could we be seeing a kind of similar pattern play out to when the Canadian Soccer League existed in the early 80s and 90s, and the Vancouver 86ers became a dynasty and won title after title after title until eventually getting dislodged? So could we see 3, 4, 5 years out of Forge being champions?
The problem with that is that I feel like that's going to get old very fast. So it can't last that long. If it's going to last maybe another year, if they win the third straight championship or something, that's fine. But winning 4 in a row or something like that will get old fast, and you're going to lose a lot of supporters that are just kind of. A lot of people get bored about the same teams winning all the time. Like, you need your villains, but you also need your villains to lose once in a while as well.
Yeah, it also reminds me of DC United at the beginning of MLS, right? But like I agree with Steve in that it might be better if things were mixed up a little bit. And I also agree with Steve's earlier comment about how Forge is and continues to grow into the role of the heel in terms of the club that a lot of people, unless they're your club, you don't like them. They've probably taken over from the former Ottawa Fury as the number one most disliked club in, outside of the MLS anyways, in Canada.
Yeah, they're like the what you would consider the Yankees of the baseball, or the Cowboys of the NFL or other sports like that. And right now at one point Atlanta, everybody started hating Atlanta because they seemed like they were going to win all the time, but then they got knocked off ever since Frank de Boer took over, when he took over. So it's kind of like you want to see those teams get high in their respective leagues, but you also want to see them drop as well eventually, and somebody take them down a peg.
Yeah. Forge's victory today as well obviously clinched their spot in the Canadian Championship final. They will be taking on Toronto FC. We don't know when it is yet. That's the thing. We heard a little bit from David Clanahan in the last part when I asked him about that, and it all kind of stemmed from TFC President Bill Manning was on the Footy Live's kind of webcast on Thursday, and he was saying that they're hoping to play the game at BMO Field, of course they are, or in December or January, which does not seem ideal in the slightest. I mean, Bobby Smirniotis said whenever it is, they'll be ready. They do have the advantage of they're keeping their team together because they may or may not, they won't be, but in theory, they'll be playing CONCACAF League at the end of October. I don't think that's going to go ahead, but they are keeping their squad together. So at least they'll be training and keeping together, but they won't have been playing a competitive game from the 19th of September to possibly mid-December or into January. So, I mean, that's not ideal. The only way this would have worked is if the Canada Soccer and MLS had worked together so that this coming midweek, none of the MLS teams had been down in the States today and they could have played a game on Wednesday. It hasn't happened. I mean, what's your thoughts on it? When should this be and where should it take place? We talked last week about, I was hoping to ask David Clanahan about that. So I got the chance today, but we're still not really any further forward.
For me, it should be. I don't have a problem when the, but it definitely should not be a BMO Field. That's 100% for me. Like, you can even, and the thing is, it should be played in an environment where you'll be able to get a good showcase for the game, but also have it fair for everybody. My pick would actually be BC Place. That's where I think it should be played. It's a neutral site. Both teams would be coming from a same distance. You'll be able to get like I said, a good showcase for the game. Like, I know BC Place is not the greatest place to play, but it's still a good stadium. They've hosted a Women's World Cup and everything like that. So I think in that case, it's a good place to play. So that's for me. And it's also indoor, so you don't have the weather environment. The players are not affected by the weather because you don't want to put honestly, look, do you really want to put the players in a minus, 10-degree temperature or whatever in December? I think it was Colorado and Denver, if I'm not mistaken, played one MLS Cup final when they had neutral sites, and they played in Toronto, and it was like -5 or something like that, and it was a miserable game. So why do you want to put a showcase game like that in a miserable location?
Well, that definitely rules out having it in Hamilton.
I thought you went to that. Yeah, it doesn't. Toronto should not get there's a host the game, even if it's like behind closed doors. It just feels unfair. Steve, you give a good shout about BC Place, especially if the game's going to be stuck in a month like December or January.
Well, yeah, because you're going to have better weather out here. I know the roof's going to be closed and everything. I mean, David Clanahan, Zach, said he trusts Canada Soccer to make the right decision that will not tip the scales towards one team or the other. It's hard to see how it can get tipped towards the MLS team because the CPL side season's done.
Yeah. And we don't know if he's speaking out of like knowledge or, like I hope he's saying that and he knows what's going to happen and he's okay with it or he's happy for it or the league's happy for it or whatever. But ultimately you hope that this game for the Voyageurs Cup can take place, and if for it to be fair and like Steve said, that the weather's not not horrendous, and it can be a great spectacle because it would be nice to. Oh, well, it'd be nice. Yeah, it would be nice if it was in the calendar year 2020, but I don't think that's going to happen at the moment. But it would be nice to maybe kick off next year with like a meaningful game, a great. I guess it depends on what CONCACAF's doing, but it would be nice for it. It would be nice for the game to suit the occasion. I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? Like this is the final of the Voyageurs Cup. In one sense, it's the top club trophy in Canada, and so it would be nice for the game to fit that.
But it'd be so 2020 for their the 2020 Canadian Championship to be played in 2021.
Yeah,
that'd be ideal. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that kind of is ideal for it. Last couple of little things to talk about just before we wrap the show up. Bobby Smirniotis. There's an article, by the time this podcast comes out, it's probably already going to have been up on AFTN. Just having a look at his success. I mean, he was successful with Sigma. He's been involved in the game since 2005, co-founding Sigma. It's an academy that's brought a lot of players on. They were always held up as being an academy that was doing things correctly. They've got a team in League One Ontario now. The Canadian Premier League, it was set up to help develop talent, both player and management, to develop young Canadian coaches, to give them the opportunity to manage at a high level that they might not have had. And Bobby has certainly grabbed that opportunity with both hands. He's shown what he can do in the game. He's won back-to-back championships now. He's built a team of winners. He's built a team defence first and then going out from that. I asked him after the game about his ambitions, because everyone's talking about his players moving on. And he said, yeah, if the right opportunity came along, he'd consider it. And he would look to have all the options. Do you feel he deserves a look, whether it's with an MLS team, whether it's involved in some way with Canada Soccer? Someone suggested a great idea. He could be the under-23 head coach whilst also dual doing the Forge role at the same time. I think he deserves more opportunities than he's got with Forge, because I think he needs maybe a bigger challenge now because he's shown what he can do with Forge.
And I agree, and like you said before, like about Sigma, he's done so much with them and developed players that have gone to NCAA and become players that eventually come back to MLS or CPL. So yeah, I think there's something about him that has created a culture. See Cincinnati there, a culture that has kind of developed, and not only at Hamilton but other parts of Ontario, and he can maybe transport that culture to other factions. So I think he is a good shout for whether you want to call it MLS or that's the thing about CPL. It's not about just developing players, but coaches, and like we said last time, referees, or we linesmen. We need to develop those too. And that, I know people always want to say, "Oh, you develop a player and he gets the national team," and that's what we're looking for CPL. But CPL can also do so many different things at different levels. Hell, I think they should be doing a better job at this point, and they haven't been. But developing people that commentate on the game, that has to be improved too. I personally, I don't think they're kind of just pushing people in, but they just need to create a better chemistry. Right now, I think for what the year is, and it's what their second year. I think it's a solid job. It's just a matter of don't get settle in and keep improving on that, and keep getting the talent that can do play by play, and develop those young play by play people. Like shout out to Gideon. Gideon should be in CPL one day, right? So you got to keep developing those people at every position of the sport, not just players.
Yeah, and referees, like we mentioned last week as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. The referee, we're done talking about the game, but to me, the final could have been a completely different game. Ooh. Not just with refereeing, but with VAR for sure.
Yeah, the penalty.
I think that would have been a penalty, absolutely. I think was it David Edgar?
David Edgar, handball? Yep.
Yeah, that would have been a penalty for sure. Could have changed the entire outcome of the game. So in one sense, the game it's like a different game when you have VAR and when you don't have VAR. But yeah, to your other point, Steve, you're right. Yeah, needs to be about developing. The league needs to be about developing a whole. I don't like this term, but a whole industry of football in this country. In terms of Bobby Michael, I think he's done extremely well. He's played a significant role, obviously, like you said, at Sigma and now at Forge. He's also played a significant role in the lives of a number of players who've come through, like Kyle Becker, like Kyle Laren. And so, one day you have to think that one day he is the type of guy who will get bigger chances at other places. And like when you talk about MDS, you have to think that one day he could be a guy who gets the opportunity to lead the men's national team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like if MDS moves on from here, I've spoken before that I think someone like Tommy Peelden Jr. would be a good guy to come in. But Bobby Smirniotis would be a great guy to come in as well because of his passion for developing young Canadian talent. David Edgar saying that for him, Bobby's right up there as one of the best managers that he's ever played under, and that he's learned so much from him during this experience in the bubble as well. And I mean, that's for a guy that's played in the Premier League, I mean, that's just fantastic. And we talked about Kyle Becker earlier as well. I actually did ask Kyle Becker about the Whitecaps rumours. And I said, I don't want to make this a loaded question, but obviously you know MDS from your time in San Francisco. You've been linked with a move to the Whitecaps. Do you still feel that there's some unfinished business in MLS? And he was a bit cagey about it, but he did come out and say, I've not had any discussions with anyone, any club in MLS about returning. So,
yeah, and the thing is I appreciate that from the players, because you don't want to seem like because it can very much seem like when you're looking at going to MLS, it seems like you're downgrading CPL. So I'm glad that he's doing that, whether it is somebody speaking to him or not. It's good that he's not being like, I want to get out of here. Yeah, I want to get out of here. Like Fredy Montero talking about Lucas Cavallini earlier, that, yeah, he wants to play in Europe. Yeah, I want to get, like, Inbal Wang that wants to get out of here as soon as possible. So it's good that you're doing that. Yeah, obviously players are going to be wanting to go to, higher clubs. Like what? Alphonso Davies, obviously he wanted to go. I had a cousin of mine who mentioned today, they should have kept him. I go, you can't keep a player like Alphonso Davies here in MLS. And you have to let him go, because otherwise he was going to leave on his own. There's no way you're going to keep him long term or anything like that, unless you make sure that his parents, his father became prime minister. That's the only way you were going to confirm that he was going to stay in Canada or whatever. And so the fact that he's doing that is good, and I'm just excited that the Whitecaps won because of Kyle Beckerman, and maybe Kyle Becker, comma man, is going to be coming to the Whitecaps. So it's fantastic either way.
Yeah, Michael, it's an answer there where when a player says, like, I haven't spoken to any club, Obviously, that doesn't mean his people haven't spoken to various people
That's
or
true,
various,
yeah.
100% there, yeah.
But I agree with you, Steve, too. It's good that he's shaping it or phrasing it in such a way that doesn't denigrate the Canadian Premier League, which is this growing league. I still don't think if Kyle Becker were to go to the Vancouver Whitecaps, I don't think that would. It doesn't really feel like it makes a whole ton of sense, but time will tell. In terms of Kyle Becker as an individual, yeah, I wonder where he's at in terms of, does he just want to be at Forge and build a dynasty there with Bobby, someone he knows really well?
Yeah, I've wondered that too.
Yeah, or does he want to, after this year or after next year, go somewhere else, whether that's on the continent or somewhere else in the world to have a new footballing experience, as they like to say.
Yeah, I mean, I asked Bobby about Becker as well, and he said he fully believes he can go and play at the higher level again. There's going to be a lot of questions about what should happen next in the CPL as well, because the guys aren't going to be back on the pitch for 6 to 7 months. We'll cover that in next week's show, because I've got a lot of good audio round about that and about potential loan deals and various things about that as well. So we'll come to that. Let's just round up tonight's show by having a look at the nominees in the CPL for this year's Player of the Year awards. So I don't know how much of this you guys actually both really got to watch, but the 3 Golden Glove nominees, Tristan Henry from Forge FC, Callum Irving from Pacific FC, and Christian Oxner from Halifax Wanderers. For me, I think you have to give it to Tristan Henry. He just had an absolutely outstanding tournament and a clean sheet in the final.
I agree with you, Michael, but obviously my bias would say Callum Irving.
I'm biased too. I have no idea about this Hamilton Forge keeper or whatever, so I'm going to go with Callum Irving.
Under 21 players.
And expect the next few categories to go a certain way as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Well, this next one, let's see who you pick. Under 21 Player of the Year: Julian Dunn, Valor FC on loan from Toronto, Krasnovich Nsa, Halifax Wanderers, and Mo Farsi from Cavalry FC. And Mo Farsi, for me, is the standout under 21 player. He was outstanding, and I really wouldn't mind the Whitecaps taking a look at him.
I agree with you, Michael. I think he's probably most likely to win it. However, I think Dunn did a really good job with Valor. Like, I know they didn't improve.
Done.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't improve as much as, say, Halifax did as a squad, but I think Valor improved and he took steps in the right direction, and I think Dunn was a significant part of that. I'm
leaning towards Dunn as well.
I think I know who Steve will pick in this one. I think I know who Zach will pick in this one. Player of the Year. And the nominees are Marco Bustos, Pacific FC, Akeem Garcia, Halifax Wanderers, Kyle Becker, Forge FC.
Kyle Becker's going to win, but again, my heart says that Bustos did more to turn around. It was like Kyle Becker kept the ship going, kept it going steady and to another title. Whereas to me, Marco Bustos took Pacific to another level and took his play to another level. And he's not going to win, but that's why I think he should.
I think Marco Bustos, if Marco Bustos take him away from that lineup, and I don't think Pacific does nearly as well as they did. He was on every goal. And we mentioned it before. I tweeted at you, Michael, that, that given goal could be a world record about that goal that he had against that, where it was the longest given goal in soccer, in football history. I've never seen him work that hard. That's the amazing thing about it. So, I think if you take Kyle Becker off the Hamilton team, that team might still be okay to get going. Like they might be able to work around it or whatever, because you got to get David Edgar behind Kyle Becker. But Marco Bustos, boy, what I've seen of him, I haven't seen before. So I think, and the thing is, the fact that you have One Soccer Media mentioning him as a shout out for the national team, that should be. I don't know who votes on this, but if they're voting on it, then maybe it is Marco Bustos.
Well, for me, going into today's final, if Halifax had won it, I would have given it to Akeem Garcia. who I thought had a good tournament. His goals led the way. But I feel with Halifax not winning it, you can't really give it to him. And I am actually picking Marco for the reasons that Zach said, because he basically turned this team around. And as Steve said, it's not a one-man show, but he had so much contributions, goals and assists, and hands in the goals, and just leading the team.
Wasn't he in on like 80-90% of the goals? I feel like he was. I feel like if you look back, he was on almost every goal.
I know the game was meaningless to them and didn't change the fate for them, but the performance he put on in that 5-0 game against Halifax was, it was one of the, I think, arguably the greatest individual performance the CPL has seen so far.
It brought a tear to my eye. I'm not lying at all. I'm sorry. It brought a tear to my eye, the way he was playing and the way he brought, it was like, I expected them to kind of go half-assed kind of in the game, but you don't expect it with a POG-led team. But the way that he brought the team and was just pushing it. I thought even after the third goal, maybe he'll let it go. But then he was involved in that fourth goal, and it was fantastic. So I know that's probably recency bias that I'm seeing Marc Dos Santos the way he played there. But you saw it in other games too. The last game against Edmonton. And I know, again, not a great team to play against, talent-wise. But that late goal, utterly fantastic.
One of the goals of the tournament.
For me, whether you want to call it most valuable player or best player, it's Marc Dos Santos for me. I have no doubt in my mind.
Then the 5-0, did he score with his head and his right foot?
He did score with his head. That first goal he scored
and his second goal was his right foot.
On that too. I think you're right on that as well. Yeah.
And then I think the first assist was the outside of his left foot.
It was just sublime.
It was a great performance.
Yeah. I mean, it brought a tear to my eye. I think it did. It might also just have been the toxic smoke from the New West Pier fire. But the last thing, Coach of the Year, you've got Bobby, you've got Stephen Hart at Halifax, and you've got Mr. from Ottawa, who beat out Pamadou in the voting. I think it's just because
it was ridiculous.
How did he get a nomination when there were so many visuals of him? Seemed like he was he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to.
I think it might actually be
was
the translator that got the nomination. I might be a bit mixed up there.
Well, he got more cards. He got booked more than the.
Is it because he's the DP coach?
I think it's because just of what he had to face, putting the team together at short notice, etc., etc. But I think Pa should have been in there. I know why they picked Mister, but it should have been Pa.
Who were the other two nominations?
Bobby from Forge and Stephen Hart from Halifax.
I hope Stephen Hart gets it.
I think Robin Gale would have been a better nomination than Mister. I think that would have been better because he's improved his team so much.
Yeah.
I always look at it as an improvement. Like expansion teams, unless you're in the final, you should not be nominated because everybody knows that's your first year. But to see an improvement like Pacific had, like Halifax had with Stephen Hart, with the way Valor improved, I think those are the clear nominations. I even Bobby, yes, I don't know if they voted this because they knew he was going to be in the final already before they put these nominations out or not. But I even think that he was not even worthy of a nomination. I think it was those three that I mentioned before that should have been nominated before even Bobby.
I think I'd probably go with Stephen Hart just because of the turnaround that he did. And also, I said on a few shows now, he's so much fun to speak to. When we're chatting about the Canadian Championship final and how TFC wanted it played in December or January, he's like, really and truly, who wants to be playing soccer in Canada in December? Very true. And on those words, let's wrap up tonight's show. So just before we go, let everyone know where they can find you online.
You can find me on Twitter at WhitecapsBeat.
For me, it's at Zachary AM in the Twitterverse.
You can find me on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Read our stuff away from the numbers, aftn.ca. Lots of Whitecaps, lots of CPL stuff up on the site over the last week or so. We've got a lot more to come as well. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you want to go to our YouTube channel, AFTN Canada, give us a like and a subscribe and turn on notifications. We probably won't do a post-game show on Wednesday, but thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. We'll be back soon. Until then, thanks for listening, take care, and mon the back-to-back caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers, away from the numbers.